I feel rejuvenated, kind of, because after working on it so long, it's so much work. A lot of people, they're used to just seeing the outcome of work. They never see the side of the work you go through to produce the outcome.
What else don't we know about Michael Jackson? His brother Tito might have left something we haven't before he passed away. In a moment that stunned fans, the quietest in the family, always out of drama, and the headlines died last year and finally spoke of his iconic brother in fondness and reflection. His revelations were not just about Michael, they were about legacy, love, and the heavy cost of being a Jackson. As the world listened, it became clear. Some truths refused to stay buried. A brother's truth before goodbye. Before Tito Jackson passed away in 2024, he finally opened up in a way that fans of the Jackson family had rarely seen. Known as one of the more low-key and reserved members of the Jackson Five, Tito had always been loyal, quiet, and focused more on his music than on the drama or headlines that surrounded his family, especially his younger brother, Michael Jackson. But in the last few months of his life, something changed. Tito began to speak more openly about the King of Pop, reflecting on Michael's legacy, struggles, and what it really felt like to lose him not just as a music legend, but as a beloved brother. For years, the public had heard stories about Michael, some beautiful, some tragic, and some downright controversial. But what we didn't hear much about was what his siblings felt privately, especially someone like Tito, who wasn't always front and center in the media. That's why it caught people's attention when Tito started to share more about Michael during an interview in August 2024. His words weren't dramatic or headline-chasing, they were heartfelt, simple, and deeply human. He talked about the pain of watching his brother go through so many public battles, saying that the world often forgot Michael was a person behind all the fame, pressure, and expectations. Tito believed that a lot of what happened to Michael was unfair, and he made it clear that it was something that stayed with the family long after Michael was gone. One of the most touching things Tito shared was how the Jackson family still feels Michael's presence. Around the anniversary of Michael's death, the family sometimes comes together, and it's during these moments, especially on stage, that Tito felt his brother the most. He said it's almost like Michael's energy never really left them, especially when they're performing. That kind of statement is something fans of the Jacksons really resonate with, because even though Michael is physically gone, his spirit seems to live on not just through music, but through the memories and emotions of his family. It wasn't just what Tito said, though. It was how he said it. There was a kind of calm wisdom in his voice. It wasn't about clearing up rumors or rewriting history. It was just a man remembering his brother, missing him, and finally feeling ready to say it out loud. It's worth noting that Tito wasn't just opening up in interviews. He was also reconnecting with people who had been by his side for decades, like his close friend and business partner, Terry Harvey Maltbia. The two had worked together for years, and it was actually Terry who was with Tito during his final moments. On September 15, 2024, Tito suffered a fatal heart attack. His last words, according to reports, were, "I ain't feeling good in my chest." That was it. No dramatic final speech. No long farewell. Just a simple, human moment shared between old friends. It's heartbreaking, but also oddly comforting. In the end, Tito left this world the same way he lived in it, quietly, sincerely, and surrounded by those who mattered most. It feels like Tito knew his time was coming. Maybe that's why he felt the need to finally speak out about Michael. Maybe it was his way of making peace, of leaving a final message that wasn't just about music or fame, but about family, love, and loss. And that's what makes his final words about Michael so powerful. They weren't meant to stir up controversy or steal headlines. They were meant to show the world that behind every pop star is a person, and behind every legend is a family that still grieves. In sharing his heart before his passing, Tito Jackson gave us one last gift. Not just a glimpse into the life of his brother, but into his own soul. For that, both he and Michael deserve our deepest respect. He's the oldest brother, but also the quietest. Let's dig deeper into his personal journey beyond the fame of Michael. Brother in low profile. Tito Jackson, whose full name is Toriano Adaril Jackson, was born on October 15, 1953. He grew up in a big musical family in Gary, Indiana, where music was just part of everyday life. Tito was the oldest Jackson brother who played guitar, and he quickly became known for his smooth, laid-back style that added a special touch to the Jackson 5's sound. While the spotlight often shined brightest on his younger brother Michael, Tito was the steady force behind the scenes, holding down the rhythm and making sure their performances had that extra groove. The Jackson 5 blew up in the late 60s and early 70s with hit after hit, and Tito's guitar work was a big reason why they sounded so fresh and exciting. Even though he wasn't the lead singer, Tito's contributions as a guitarist helped shape the vibe that made the group legendary. After the peak of the Jackson 5, Tito didn't jump into the solo spotlight right away like some of his brothers. Instead, he took his time to find his own musical direction. Eventually, he discovered his passion for blues music, which really suited his laid-back personality and soulful playing style. In 2016, he finally released his first solo album called Tito Time. The album was a cool mix of blues, soul, and a bit of rock, and it showed off a side of Tito that many fans hadn't heard before. It was clear he wasn't just Michael's brother. He was an accomplished artist in his own right, with his own story to tell through music. Tito Time felt like a long overdue introduction to Tito as a solo musician and a real passion project for him. But Tito's story isn't just about his own career. He's also a family man and a proud dad. His three sons, Taj, Terrell, and TJ, formed a group called 3T in the 90s, which became pretty successful, especially overseas in Europe. Tito helped guide them through the music world, passing down his knowledge and experience. It's like music is just in their blood, and Tito's influence helped 3T carve out their own space in the industry. Even though Tito has always been a bit more low-key than some of his siblings, his impact on music, both through his own work and his family, is undeniable. He might not always be the first name that comes to mind when people think of the Jackson family, but his contributions have been huge. From the early days with the Jackson 5 to his solo blues career and supporting his sons in 3T, Tito's journey shows a musician who stayed true to himself and his love of music. Struggles of a legend. Michael Jackson, often called the King of Pop, lived a life that was anything but easy, despite the massive fame and success he achieved. From an early age, Michael was thrown into the spotlight as a member of the Jackson 5. He didn't have a typical childhood. While other kids were out playing and going to school dances, Michael was rehearsing, performing, and living under the intense pressure of fame. His father, Joe Jackson, was known for being extremely strict and, at times, abusive, using tough discipline to keep the boys in line and focused on their careers. Michael would later admit in interviews that he feared his father and felt robbed of his childhood, something that haunted him for the rest of his life. As he grew older, Michael's fame only grew bigger, but so did the pressures. Being a global icon came with constant scrutiny. Every move he made, every word he said, was watched and analyzed. It didn't help that his physical appearance began to change dramatically over the years, which sparked endless rumors and cruel jokes in the media. His skin condition, vitiligo, which caused patches of his skin to lose pigment, was often misunderstood, and people accused him of bleaching his skin to appear white. On top of that, he had multiple plastic surgeries on his nose and face, which only fueled more gossip and speculation. The media turned him into a tabloid target, calling him names like Wacko Jacko, which hurt him deeply, even though he often smiled in public. Michael also had to deal with serious allegations and lawsuits that shook his personal life and career. The most damaging were the child molestation accusations, which first surfaced in 1993 and later again in 2003. Though he was never convicted and was acquitted of all charges in the 2005 trial, the damage to his reputation was already done. The media coverage was relentless, and public opinion was deeply divided. Even though many fans stood by him, others turned away. These experiences deeply affected Michael's mental and emotional health. He became more reclusive, struggled with trust, and reportedly battled anxiety and depression. In addition to the emotional and legal battles, Michael also suffered from physical pain and a growing dependency on prescription medicine. Years of intense performances, injuries, including a serious scalp burn during a Pepsi commercial shoot, and insomnia took a toll on his body. In the final years of his life, he was said to be relying on powerful medications just to function or get any rest at all. It was this dependence that ultimately led to his untimely death in 2009, when he died of acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication. His personal doctor, Conrad Murray, was later found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. What's most heartbreaking about Michael Jackson's story is that, despite all his accomplishments and the joy he brought to millions of fans around the world, he seemed to live a life full of loneliness, pressure, and pain. He longed for the childhood he never had, struggled to find people he could trust, and constantly felt misunderstood. Behind the glitz and glamour, there was a man who just wanted to be loved and accepted for who he was, not for the legend the world had created. In many ways, Michael was a tragic figure, brilliant and talented, but also deeply troubled and worn down by the very fame he once dreamed of. His legacy remains complicated even in death. While millions still celebrate his music, his dance, and his innovation, there are others who continue to debate the darker parts of his life. But if there's one thing that's clear, it's that Michael Jackson's struggles were very real, and they shaped both the man he was and the legacy he left behind. His story serves as a powerful reminder that fame doesn't shield someone from pain. It often amplifies it. And sometimes, the people who shine the brightest on stage are the ones hurting the most behind closed doors. But it wasn't always like that for Michael. He grew up in a fun and loving household with his siblings. Did you know every brother If did not pursue music, entered the entertainment industry? Yup, it ran in the blood. The Jackson brand. Growing up as a Jackson wasn't like growing up in any ordinary family. The Jackson family, originally from Gary, Indiana, was a tight-knit but hard-working bunch. Joe and Catherine Jackson had 9 children, and from the outside, it may have seemed like chaos, but it was more like controlled chaos, especially when it came to music. Joe, the patriarch, was strict and disciplined, and he saw potential in his sons from a young age. He was determined to make something out of them, and that determination became the fuel behind the Jackson 5's rise to fame. But before the fame and the lights, there was a small house full of noise, laughter, practice sessions, and, sometimes, tension. Life for the Jackson kids wasn't always easy. Joe ran a tight ship, and while some saw his methods as harsh, others argue it was his discipline that created a group of young performers who could captivate the world. The boys, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and of course, Michael, started practicing in their tiny living room, using whatever they could as instruments when real ones weren't available. Their mother, Catherine, was the heart of the home. She was the soft-spoken, loving force that kept the family balanced. While Joe focused on the group's success, Catherine was more concerned about their well-being. She was also musically inclined and supported their dreams from the beginning. The Jackson siblings were close, despite the pressures they faced. Growing up in a big family meant there was always someone to talk to, play with, or annoy. Michael, being the youngest of the original Jackson 5, often found himself both protected and pushed by his older brothers. They all shared a bedroom, they argued, laughed, and looked out for each other. And while music was a huge part of their childhood, they still had moments of just being regular kids, riding bikes, playing in the yard, and going to school. That said, once the Jackson 5 started gaining attention, their lives changed drastically. Suddenly, they were performing in clubs, auditioning for Motown, and eventually appearing on national TV. Childhood became something they experienced in the background, while fame took the front seat. Michael, in particular, had a unique experience growing up. He was always different. His voice, his charisma, and his stage presence were impossible to ignore. While his siblings were talented, Michael's star rose the fastest and shined the brightest. But even as he became the frontman of the group, the bond with his siblings remained strong, at least in the early years. Behind the scenes, they were still just brothers, dealing with sibling rivalries, teasing, and those small but meaningful moments that only siblings can understand. They had each other's backs, and in the whirlwind of fame, that connection was one of the few constants in their lives. Of course, as the years went on, things changed. The pressures of fame, individual ambitions, and personal struggles started to create some distance between the siblings. Jermaine went solo, and eventually, Michael broke away to pursue his iconic solo career. But even through the ups and downs, the Jacksons never stopped being a family. They've had their share of conflicts and controversies, but they've also shared unforgettable moments, on stage and off. Growing up, Jackson meant growing up fast, under the spotlight, and with the weight of the world watching. But it also meant growing up with a built-in team, a group of siblings who knew exactly what you were going through, because they were right there with you. While fame came early and hard, the foundation they built as siblings, laughing, singing, and sticking together, left a lasting mark on music history and on each of their lives. Let's get to briefly know each one of them. Rebbie Jackson. Rebbie Jackson is best known as the eldest child of the legendary Jackson family. While her younger siblings, like Michael, Janet, and the Jackson 5, often dominated headlines and stages around the world, Rebbie followed a quieter, more measured path. From the beginning, she seemed more grounded and less interested in the spotlight, but she still possessed a love for music that would eventually lead her to a career of her own. Growing up in the Jackson household in Gary, Indiana, Rebbie took on a big sister role early on. As the firstborn, she often helped look after her younger siblings, providing a sense of structure and stability amidst the whirlwind of talent and ambition that filled their home. Though her parents, particularly her father Joe Jackson, were focused on the musical careers of her brothers, Rebbie maintained her own quiet ambitions. She didn't immediately jump into the entertainment industry, instead choosing to prioritize her personal life first. It wasn't until 1984 that Rebbie officially launched her solo music career, releasing her debut album, Centipede. The album's title track became a significant hit, thanks in part to the involvement of her brother Michael Jackson, who wrote and produced the song and even provided backing vocals. The song climbed the R&B charts and helped Rebbie gain recognition in the music industry. Though her sound was rooted in R&B and pop, it carried a mature tone and style that reflected her age and experience compared to her younger, trendier siblings. Over the next decade or so, Rebbie released more music, including albums like Reaction, 1986, and Are You Tough Enough, 1988. While these later works didn't reach the same level of commercial success as Centipede, they showcased her consistency and growth as an artist. Her music often touched on themes of love, independence, and strength, and she maintained a loyal fan base that appreciated her more subtle and soulful approach. Despite her musical achievements, Rebbie always seemed to prioritize her family life above fame. She married Nathaniel Brown in 1968, and together they raised 3 children. Their marriage lasted until Nathaniel's passing in 2013, and throughout those years, Rebbie remained dedicated to her family. She kept her personal life largely out of the public eye, rarely appearing in tabloids or making headlines. Her decision to live more privately set her apart from many in the entertainment industry, and even from most of her siblings. Jackie Jackson. Jackie Jackson, whose full name is Sigmund Esco Jackson, was born on May 4, 1951. He's the second oldest of the famous Jackson siblings, which makes him kind of like the big brother figure in the legendary Jackson family. While he may not have always been in the spotlight as much as Michael or Janet, Jackie has played a key role in the family's musical legacy. He was one of the original members of the Jackson 5, later known as the Jacksons, where he sang alongside his brothers and helped the group rise to global fame. Jackie's smooth voice and calm stage presence added a unique flavor to the group's performances. Even after the peak of the Jackson 5's success, he stayed active in the music world. Jackie also put out some solo work. His first solo album, Jackie Jackson, came out in 1973, and much later, in 1989, he released another album called Be the One. Though his solo career didn't quite hit the heights of some of his siblings, it showed his passion for music and his personal style as an artist. Over the years, Jackie has stayed closely connected to Jackson family projects. He's often appeared at tribute shows and events honoring his brother Michael and the Jackson legacy. Even though he's kept a relatively low profile, Jackie Jackson continues to be a proud and active part of the Jackson family's musical journey. Jermaine Jackson. Jermaine Jackson was born in 1954 and grew up as one of the older siblings in the famous Jackson family. While most people instantly think of Michael when they hear Jackson, Jermaine made his own mark in music and entertainment. He was one of the original members of the Jackson 5, where he sang alongside his brothers and helped launch the group into global fame. Jermaine's smooth vocals and stage presence made him a standout, even in a group full of stars. After the huge success of the Jackson 5, Jermaine went on to have a pretty solid solo career. He had some memorable hits like Let's Get Serious and Do What You Do, which showed off his style and helped him stay relevant in the music scene even as his brothers took different paths. While his solo career didn't reach the same heights as Michael's, Jermaine definitely carved out his own lane and kept making music that fans loved. Outside of music, Jermaine's life has been just as interesting. He converted to Islam in the 80s after a trip to Bahrain and has spoken openly about how it changed his life and gave him peace. Over the years, he's also appeared on various reality TV shows and interviews, often stepping up to defend his family during tough times. Whether it's speaking out for Michael or keeping the Jackson name alive, Jermaine has always been a loyal brother and a recognizable face in pop culture. LaToya Jackson. LaToya Jackson, born on May 29, 1956, is an American singer, songwriter, actress, and television personality who carved out her own identity despite growing up in the shadow of the famous Jackson family. Throughout the 80s and 90s, she released several albums, experimenting with pop and R&B sounds, While making a name for herself in the entertainment world, her career wasn't just about music. LaToya also made appearances on various TV shows, showing off her personality and staying in the public eye. Behind the scenes, though, she faced some serious personal struggles, especially during her abusive marriage to her former manager, Jack Gordon. It was a difficult period in her life, but she eventually found the strength to break free. Since then, LaToya has turned her painful experiences into purpose, becoming a vocal advocate against domestic violence. Her journey has been full of ups and downs, but she's shown resilience and a desire to help others through her story. In recent years, LaToya has continued to stay active in the entertainment world, often appearing on reality TV and talk shows where she shares insights into both her life and the legendary Jackson family. She's also worked behind the scenes, taking on business ventures and supporting various causes close to her heart. Fans admire her for being open about her struggles and for using her platform to bring attention to issues that matter. While she may not have reached the same musical heights as some of her siblings, LaToya has earned respect for her courage, independence, and determination to rise above the challenges she's faced. Her story is one of survival, reinvention, and quiet strength. Other than Tito, Michael had another older brother who supported him growing up, Marlon Jackson. Marlon Jackson, born on March 12, 1957, is best known as a member of the legendary musical group, the Jackson 5. As one of the older brothers in the famous Jackson family, Marlon grew up in a household full of talent and ambition. Alongside his siblings, including Michael and Jermaine, he helped shape the sound of Motown in the late 60s and early 70s. With hits like I Want You Back and ABC, the Jackson 5 became a household name, and Marlon played a key role as a singer and dancer. Though he was part of one of the most famous families in music, Marlon didn't seek out the same level of solo fame as some of his brothers. He did venture out on his own briefly, releasing a solo album called Baby Tonight in 1987. The album had some success, with its title track even charting, but Marlon never fully pursued a solo music career after that. Instead, he seemed content to step out of the spotlight and explore other interests. In later years, Marlon turned his attention to business and media. He co-founded the major broadcasting cable network, now known as the Black Family Channel, which focused on family-friendly and African-American-centered programming. Unlike his more high-profile siblings, Marlon has generally kept a low public profile, staying out of the headlines and focusing on his personal life and business endeavors. While he may not be as talked about as Michael or Janet, Marlon Jackson's contributions to music and media are still part of the rich legacy of the Jackson family. Stephen Jackson. Stephen Randall Jackson, better known as Randy Jackson, was born on October 29, 1961. He's the youngest brother of the famous Jackson family and often flew under the radar compared to siblings like Michael and Janet. While he wasn't part of the original Jackson 5 lineup, Randy eventually joined the group in the mid-70s, stepping in more prominently after Michael left to pursue his solo career. In addition to his time performing with the Jacksons, Randy also dipped into the business world. He co-founded a company called Total Multimedia Incorporated, which focused on technology and entertainment. Though it didn't become a household name, it showed his interest in branching out beyond just music and performance. Randy's life hasn't always been smooth sailing. He's had a fair share of personal and legal troubles, including disputes with other family members that occasionally made headlines. In recent years, he's been much more private and out of the public spotlight, choosing a quieter life compared to his earlier days in show business. Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson, born on May 16, 1966, is a true icon in the world of pop and R&B music. Coming from the famous Jackson family, she carved out her own path and quickly became a superstar. With a smooth voice, strong stage presence, and innovative music videos, Janet made a major impact on the music industry. Songs like Rhythm Nation, That's the Way Love Goes, and Together Again became huge hits and remain fan favorites to this day. Over the years, Janet racked up a long list of achievements. She's considered one of the most successful female artists in history, both in terms of record sales and influence. Her albums and performances have pushed boundaries, especially when it comes to mixing music with social messages. But Janet didn't just stick to music. She also took her talents to the big screen. She starred in films like Poetic Justice alongside Tupac Shakur, and later in Why Did I Get Married, showing off her skills as an actress. Even though she's been in the spotlight for decades, Janet has kept her personal life mostly private. In 2017, she welcomed her first child, a son, and since then has continued to tour and release new music. Her ability to stay relevant and inspire new generations speaks to her talent and dedication. Janet Jackson remains a powerful figure in pop culture, respected, admired, and still going strong. Beyond her music and acting, Janet Jackson has also been a major influence on fashion, dance, and pop culture. Her bold style choices and groundbreaking choreography have inspired countless artists who came after her. From her military-inspired outfits in the Rhythm Nation era to her edgy, trend-setting looks on stage and in videos, Janet has always pushed creative boundaries. She's not just a performer, she's a trendsetter who helped shape the image of modern pop stardom. Are you a Michael Jackson fan too? Share with us what you think about the video. Subscribe to the channel for more.